Hi everyone, welcome to week 4 of English 200. My name is Beth Driver, your instructor for this course. I wanted to make sure I put a video up here for you guys because I know this week is particularly difficult because you have to write on a poetry essay. And I want to start with the more difficult portion of the week, which would be the essay. Note that the essay that you have due this week is slightly longer than the short story essay. It also involves just a bit of research. You need to find one additional source. The source needs to be peer-reviewed. If you don't understand what peer-reviewed is, don't worry, I'm going to let you know. It's basically a source that has been reviewed and checked for accuracy by experts in the field. So all fields have experts. Medicine, they have doctors, people in the sports field, they're experts in sports physiology, sports medicine. Well, it's the same is true for literature. There are experts in the field of literature. They've studied, for example, Shakespeare, they've studied Twain, they've studied the Victorian era, and they write articles on these areas that they are an expert in. For example, if you need to find an article on the war prayer, well, there's plenty of articles written by experts in Twain who have written about the war prayer. So these articles are out there on each of the poems that you have been assigned this week. You just have to know where to look for these peer-reviewed articles. What's not peer-reviewed? Well, first of all, the primary source is not peer-reviewed. Obviously, it's a primary source. It's a work of literature. Spark Notes, Schmoop, Cliff Notes, all of those are not peer-reviewed. They're not written by experts in the field, and even if they were, they're not reviewed for accuracy by other experts in the field. And even if they were, they're not offering a work of criticism interpreting the work. It's very surface. It just basically gives you the basic understanding of the work. I don't want to see those sources in your essay. I don't mind that you use those sources. I assume that you do. But I want you to prove to me that you've actually read the poem and that you've done some critical research on your source, not Schmoop or Spark Notes. I hate those sources. Anyway, so avoid them in your paper, please. So when you write your essay this week, keep in mind that it needs to be at least 750 words, no more than 1,000. The word count does not it's only the content. The headers and the works cited list is not included in the word count. You can use these critical approaches. Do not use reader response or biographical criticism. I will deduct heavily if I see those two in your essay. It's highlighted. It's clear you're not supposed to use those, so don't use those. You are only allowed to use these critical approaches, okay? So let's look up the secondary scholarly source. What you would do is obviously you would go to the library right here, and then you're going to click on articles and databases A through Z. And I'll just show you how to do that. So let's click on the library. And it's taking a little bit, but that's okay. And then see where it says A through Z list right there? Click on that. Then you should have this pop up. The sources that are useful for the databases that are useful for this essay are Academic Search Premier, EBSCO, not ebooks, but this one, ProQuest. Let's see where it is. Right there. And the best one, honestly, is one that many students do not use, but this one has a ton of sources, JSTOR. So I'm going to click on JSTOR. Okay. And then I'm going to do a quick search for and it's just going to take a little bit to pull up. Note this. Okay. There are tons and tons of sources. So let's say you want to do a historical analysis of it using maybe new historicism. So I'm not sure if this particular source is relevant. It looks kind of interesting. First of all, when you pull up these sources, you can cite the source using MLA. Okay, the characters here are a little different, but it should be able to cut and paste. Then you can see the source. You don't necessarily have to download the PDF. If you scroll down, you could see the source on your screen at the bottom. Okay? So sometimes, and even especially in this case, you might find so many sources that you have to narrow it down a little bit. And that's fine. And you can narrow it down by adding additional search terms. So let's say, and then you put in, because you want to focus on the Harlem Renaissance, let's say. So let's search and see what we come up with. Okay, so that narrowed it down just a little bit. That looks a little depressing. Okay, here, this one looks very interesting. So let's pull that one up. Again, you cite the source, MLA style, cut and paste that into your essay, and you can read the source down below. Now, note this though. This is a book review, and you may not find this as useful because sometimes the actual article in book reviews are very short and it's not really discussing your poem in particular. So be aware of that. But JSTOR is a terrific source, and it does house a lot of the articles about the poetry that you're reading this week. So please take advantage of this wonderful resource in our library. Now, Google Scholar is useful as well, but the problem is sometimes with Google Scholar you get so many sources, or you get sources that you only have access to part of the source, like for example the first paragraph. That's not going to do you any good because you actually need to use this source in your essay. I don't want you to just put a couple of in-text citations here and there. I want you to actively use this source. I want you to show what you've learned about the poem through this particular source. And you can't do that if you don't have access to the source. Now, one way around that, if you are insistent upon using Google Scholar, that's fine, I understand. Put PDF after your search terms, PDF, because that way you have a PDF version of the article and you have full access to it. You'll notice that when you go to Google Scholar and you do enter search terms, you're going to go back to JSTOR because a lot of the articles for literature are housed in JSTOR, and you won't have access to these articles through Google Scholar. You're going to have to go back to APUS, back to JSTOR, and access the article. If you find that easier, you can backtrack that way, but I just think it'd be easier just to click on JSTOR in the first place. So that's it for the assignment. If you do have any questions, let me know. My expectations for the assignment are very similar to the short story essay, except you're going to use criticism to interpret a poem, and you're going to use an article to back up your discussion. As always, avoid I, me, you, we, us, and are in your essay. Use third person, and try to use literary present. That's the standard for most works of essays that focus on literature. The work exists in the present, so you would discuss the work using present tense. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go too far into the critical lenses. There is a pretty good explanation of it in your lesson this week. These are the readings. Actually, and for some reason I am on the wrong page. Let's see. Okay, so we have the required reading right here. This actually appears to not be housing the correct week 4, so I need to go back and discuss that with the bookstore. But anyway, just access it here. You have a good source that explains literary criticism right here. I would access that. And then you also have a number of sources listed. These are the same poems that you read last week. So my advice would be to go through it again. It shouldn't be too heavy a load of reading because you've already had these readings last week. Here's another good source that I wanted to show you. Dr. Siegel gives some really good explanations of critical theory. Basically, what critical theory is that it works like a lens. It allows for different interpretation of a work. Just like when you wear sunglasses and they're tinted red, well, and you see everything kind of hinged in red a little bit, or let's say you have night vision goggles and you can see the world in a different way using these goggles. Well, critical lenses kind of work the same way. And I say lenses because they kind of help you interpret a poem using a different thought. For example, new criticism is what basically you were doing last week. But new historicism is basically, it's like historical. But instead of just discussing how the work is in a particular place in history, it pulls in a lot of other components too. History as it relates to class, as it relates to feminism. So it's just a really wide-reaching critical lens. And so what you do is you use these critical approaches, and then it helps you focus a different sort of interpretation than the typical new criticism, which tells me what you think the poem means on the surface. Okay, so hopefully that helps you a little bit. That's what you're going to be doing in your essay. That's what you're going to be doing in your form. Make sure you take the quiz, and it will tell you what your assignment is. Okay, I've already taken mine, and I'll read the feedback. I was assigned The Negro Speaks of Rivers. So that's what I've focused my initial post on. All right, you also have a poetry project that you're going to start this week. I've already enjoyed the posts that you've had. They've been a lot of fun. You guys are a very creative bunch, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with this week. All right, well, that's it for the lesson. I know it's a lot. I know I've talked a lot here. Hopefully some of my comments have helped you. If you need more help, please feel free to post in the course questions location of the classroom, because I bet your question is everyone else's as well. If you have a personal one, though, feel free to send me a message. Have a great day, everyone. I'll see you in the forums. Bye.